A senior Russian military commander has been killed in Moscow after a bomb planted beneath his car detonated, marking the third Russian general killed by a car bomb in just 1 year. Russian investigators confirmed that Lieutenant General Fanil Sarvarov, head of the Army's Directorate for Operational Training, died from his injuries after the explosion on Monday. The blast tore through his vehicle in a Moscow parking area, leaving the car mangled, debris scattered across the ground, and blood visible inside the driver's seat.
My mom woke up, panicked, and saw that the police, firefighters, and ambulance were already arriving. She thought, well, help is needed, it's really serious. She went out, checked, asked the neighbors, but immediately went back inside so as not to put herself in danger.
She went out, checked if neighbors safe, but went back inside to avoid danger. Here, camp shot something down. Or maybe it was the Ukrainian saboteurs?
That's the kind of actions they took. They went to take a look.
To look, no, I didn't go. I read the news, but there was no information yet. As for everything else, everything was pretty much allowed.
Yes, I heard it. I heard the explosion, but at first I didn't pay any attention to it. Of course.
Authorities say 56-year-old Sarvarov had participated in Russia's war in Ukraine, though they offered no further operational details. According to state media, his military career also included deployments in Syria and operations against insurgents in Chechnya during the 1990s. He was promoted to his most recent senior role in 2016. Russia's investigative committee has opened a criminal case and says multiple versions of the killing are under review, including the possible involvement of Ukrainian special services. The attack comes almost exactly 1 year after another Russian general was killed by an explosive device in Moscow, an operation later claimed by Ukraine's domestic security agency, the SBU. In April, a third general, Lieutenant General Yaroslav Moskalik, was killed when a car exploded near him outside the capital. The killing comes at a sensitive moment, as US-backed peace negotiations over the war in Ukraine continue. Over the weekend, American, Ukrainian, and European officials met in Florida, describing the talks as productive and constructive, with discussions focused on timelines and next steps.
Even in the midst of all that, we remain engaged around the world, including in conflicts that perhaps are not central to everyday life in America, but the president has made it a priority to be a peacemaker. And so you've seen us engaged, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, or India and Pakistan, or Thailand and Cambodia, which is an ongoing challenge, or the tragedy we see now in Sudan, or the potential for further strife in South Sudan and that falling apart. I mean, no matter Armenia and Azerbaijan, we are always looking for opportunities, if possible, to play the role of a mediator that brings about the avoidance of war or the ending of conflicts. And obviously, in many of these cases, you can get people to the table and agree, and then there's the implementation process.
Mr. Secretary, thanks so much for doing this. I want to start with Russia-Ukraine. You mentioned that...
Easy stuff, yeah.
You mentioned your efforts. There are talks going on right now, starting today and this weekend in Miami. What are your expectations from those talks? And the president yesterday made it clear he expects Ukraine to basically step up before Russia walks away. If you wake up in Odessa, if you're Ukrainian this morning seeing Russians are bombing, your city, or if you turn on TV and listen to Putin, what he says, why would the Ukrainians, ignore what the Russians are saying publicly and believe in what they're hearing?
Yeah, look, there's a reason why this war hasn't ended, and that is because there's complex factors at play. I know that sounds like a throwaway line, but it's true. What we have tried to do in this entire process, and let's be clear about this. I mean, the United States is engaged in this. The president says this, and I'll translate what I think he's trying to say to you in all of this, and I think he's been pretty clear about it, is it's not our war, it's a war in another continent. We have equities, we have engagement in this war, but it's not our war per se. But we have been told by everybody, I think everybody would agree, that there's only one nation on earth, there's only one entity on earth that can actually talk to both sides and figure out whether there's a way to end this war peacefully. And that's the United States. And we've invested a lot of time, a lot of energy at the highest levels of our government. I believe, President Trump has had more meetings with foreign leaders and others on the war in Ukraine than on any other subject, including trade. He's invested a lot of time. Steve and Jared have invested time. I've invested time. The Vice President, the Secretary of War, others, Secretary of Treasury. and more have invested a tremendous amount of time and energy in this. And what we're trying to figure out here is what can Ukraine live with and what can Russia live with, sort of identify what both sides' positions are and see if we can sort of drive them towards each other to some agreement. Wars end generally in one of two ways. Surrender by one side for another or a negotiated settlement. We don't see surrender anytime in the near future by either side, and so only a negotiated settlement gives us the opportunity to end this war. A negotiated settlement requires two things: both sides to get something out of it and both sides to give something. And we're trying to figure out what can Russia give and what do they expect to get, what can Ukraine give and what can Ukraine expect to get. In the end, the decision will be up to Ukraine and up to Russia. It will not be up to the United States. So that's the role we are trying to play in this. And that's why you see so many meetings going on. This is not about imposing a deal on anybody. It is about determining what both sides expect and need to have and what both sides are prepared to give in return for it, and figuring out whether we can have those two overlap. And of course, that takes a lot of time and a lot of hard work. It can't generally be done in the media or in press conferences. I think we've made progress, but we have ways to go. And obviously, the hardest issues are always the last issues.
Are mediating with Russia to end the war in Ukraine, but on the other hand, the Russian foreign minister yesterday or the day before said it would be a fatal mistake from the U.S. To block the oil tanks from Venezuela and trying to overthrow the Maduro regime. So, what kind of what's the assess that you're doing, and are there any safeguards in place to avoid escalation with Russia? And then I have another question about the Hezbollah, sir.
Yeah, we're not concerned about an escalation with Russia with regards to Venezuela. We've always expected them to provide rhetorical support for the Maduro regime. I think they have their hands full in Ukraine. And if he's watching, Sergei, Merry Christmas. But at the end of the day, I expected them to say what they were going to say. The rhetorical support, we understand what that's at. It's not a factor in how we consider this whole thing.
And then, if I may, about the Hezbollah, I know you already answered, but I wanted to ask you if the U.S. administration is considering a broader military support involving also potential Arab partners, not only in providing weapons, but also going into the field to disarm the Hezbollah if the diplomatic talks will fail.
Well, I've not heard anyone sort of suggest that at the level of detail that you've talked about. I think regionally, for example, if you talk to the Syrian authorities, they're very concerned about Hezbollah. I think most of the countries in the Gulf region view Hezbollah as an agent of Iranian influence and Iranian action. But as far as what you're discussing, which is sort of a coalition of armed units going into Lebanon to disarm Hezbollah, I've not heard that proposed by anybody. Perhaps you have, but I haven't, and that's not certainly something we've been...
Senator Graham
okay.
was talking about this at the
my former
Congress.
colleagues, yeah. Well, you should ask Lindsey about how he's going to put that together, because, but we just haven't heard it. I'm not saying you may not hear that one day in the future, but I think what is clear, and I think maybe perhaps what Lindsey is speaking to, is that it is clear that if you talk to leaders in the region in all these countries,